We have Seahawks and the Vikings going at it at a very, very, very low scoring game for everything that it came out to be. But also, hey, you know what? The coldest game that's happened in the playoffs so
Yeah,
far. Third coldest game, I think, ever in NFL history or
I
something
think
like that.
so.
Yeah, it was pretty damn cold.
They mentioned that before, it was like the Ice Bowl and the Freezer Bowl,
Yeah.
like the two polar
I
games.
know, which is funny because last year we had the Ice Bowl 2 with the Cowboys and the Packers, and it was not cold at all.
Yeah, I know.
But
It was a good
whatever.
game at least.
Yeah, yeah, at least it made up for that aspect. So what's Seahawks deal? I know they won the game. All right, and we'll get to that because we'll get to everything that we talk about of everybody else is the obvious thing, but what is Seahawks deal? I mean, they already beat the
Minnesota,
Vikings.
man, I don't know. They had a really impressive defensive show.
Yes, they did. They were so impressive defensively, especially the first half. But I mean,
Yeah,
they picked off Russell Wilson, which is like the first time I think he's been picked off in what 5 weeks or
yeah.
6 weeks or whatever it is.
Since he got like caught on fire a few weeks
Yeah,
ago.
I mean, granted, they don't have Thomas Rawls and they didn't have Marshawn Lynch, but they're shutting down the running game. They're getting pressure on Russell Wilson. They're really covering, between Doug Baldwin, they're shutting down first half big time and everything. I mean, they're doing very impressive, and uh, Seahawks also doing impressive, but differences. Vikings were going down and at least scoring points. I mean, Seahawks. Granted,
Field goals,
yeah,
but
field goals, but you know what? Uh, so we had that first punt that was a terrible snap for the Seahawks, and then
uh,
got so he ran it himself and broke his nose and everything, and then the question was like, well, we don't have a backup punter, so he decided to play through the rest of the game. Then they actually went downfield and risked it with the fourth down and didn't convert. And then I think they also tried to convert a fourth down again later in the game, and they convert. So three
yeah.
fourth down conversions failed for the Seahawks, which I guess is another atonement towards the Vikings that how well their defense played. And I'm. What do you think do you think it was the cold? Do you think the cold affected the Seahawks worse than the Vikings because at least Minnesota's a little more used to it?
Probably because Seattle's northern, but it's not. I don't think Seattle's as cold as like the Midwest gets.
No.
And I mean, if it had been raining, that would have probably been great for Seattle.
Yeah, right.
They would have benefited in that rain game Saturday night. But maybe the cold. I think the Vikings just maybe they underestimated the Vikings a little bit because they were like this huge favorite, and everyone's like, oh, they're gonna blow through them.
Yeah.
And it's pretty hard to isolate yourself completely from the media. Some of the players at least had to maybe start buying into the hype.
Yeah.
And I think the Vikings probably did watch a lot of tape and really, damn well they took this game serious.
Oh yeah.
So, despite the fact that they played just about as well as they could have, it ended up not being enough. Russell Wilson had like a miracle play at one point.
Oh yeah, when it was a botched snap, and then
Yeah,
that could
yeah.
have been the game decider right there.
I think that was the turning point.
Yeah, because I mean, so it was a terrible. Which okay, let's like go back a little bit
Well,
first.
there's a later turning point,
Well,
obviously,
yeah, obviously, but
that decided the game, but that's when Seattle really started scoring all the points they scored, pretty
do
much.
you remember when the Seahawks traded their center for Jimmy Graham to the Saints?
Yeah, I
Do you
remember.
think that the Seahawks are definitely missing that center? Because look at what's going on. Bad
Yeah,
snap.
considering that they didn't really do much with Graham before,
Well,
and then
yeah,
he got hurt, and
yeah,
so now they're just like this season at least they benefited from that trade not at all.
exactly. But look
Uh,
at the new center that they put in instead of who they traded to the Saints.
Unger, Max Unger.
Yeah. So bad snap for the punt and everything. He had another bad snap, but that time
Yeah,
their punter actually got it off in time and everything. bad snap to Russell Wilson, who, like, which fortunately worked out in their favor. But realistically, that could have been the end. I mean, like, they backed him up like 20 yards. He scrambled, a little bit, bought some time, and found, Tyler Lockett wide open.
Seattle, I'm assuming, they have a long snapper, right?
Oh yeah, I suppose they do.
Probably wasn't him on those punts.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Hey, this game was decided by poor long snapper play.
Yeah.
On both sides, in a way.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
It is funny.
So you want to talk about how this game ended?
I mean, how
wide left?
Goddamn Dan Marino couldn't hold the laces out. You talking about that?
Yeah. I'm the first guy to be like, fuck kickers. Mm-hmm. That's why you don't rely on kickers. You just never know. You never want to rely on. They didn't really have a choice at that point, I guess.
Right.
But it was 4th down. This is why you don't want to rely on kickers. But in his defense, it's not his fault that they only had 3 field goals. He's the reason they even had points.
Yeah. I mean, realistically,
if they could have closed the deal on one of those drives, they'd have won the game.
Yeah.
So this is a whole team. I mean, he's the most obvious one at the very end because he missed that kick.
Yeah.
But he's the only one that scored for him at all. So
he's the only reason they had 9 points to begin with.
Right. So you can't be that hard on him, I guess. I mean, this was a failure. But I mean, Adrian Peterson fumbled, for God's sakes. And that probably blew him the game, too.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually almost forgot about that fumble from Adrian because they were driving it downfield and they could have scored a field goal right there and won the game.
Right.
But yeah, that fumble with Adrian Peterson definitely.
I like how you just assumed they were only going to be able to score a field goal on that drive.
Yeah, I guess I didn't even think about that. But
they could have scored a field goal on that drive. Shit.
Well, what I meant it as if they would have even settled for 3, that still would have won the game. But realistically, too, that's not anything to really assume because that's all they were doing the rest of the game anyway. But the point is Blair Walsh, they showed, actually kicked a successful field goal from further away, and they showed that the laces were out. You probably didn't even notice it in that kick. But I have a feeling the reason that he did go wide left, I mean, not only do you have the pressure of the playoffs on your shoulders, but I think in the corner of his eye, he noticed that those laces were the wrong way and went, shit, and then just completely
psyched him out.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
It's very plausible.
I think that's probably what happened, but it's funny, and we talked about it, and you were joking around, and you said, hey, it's not so bad. You're not as bad as Brian Hoyer. I thought that was the funniest thing ever, so I actually tweeted Blair Walsh and told him that.
From the account?
Yeah, from the account. So Blair Walsh, he sees that. I mean it from the bottom of my heart that you're still a great kicker. It's unfortunate that that's just the way that everything had to end, but you are not as bad as Brian Hoyer, so you always have that to look forward to.
I mean, this is bottom line. They put the game on a kicker's back.
Mm-hmm.
Odds are, if he keeps trying to kick field goals, he's going to miss one of them.
Yeah.
How many is he going to make in a row, even though it was a chip shot? It's just, this was a failure by the Vikings offense to produce, and that's why they really lost.
Yeah.
I mean, there was the last second miss, obviously, which is the defining, event of the whole game, I guess.
And I still believe that fumble with Adrian Peterson was what gave Seahawks the momentum to even score to begin with. Because if he would have never fumbled that drive, who's not to say that we would have seen 2 teams produce goose eggs in the wild card weekend? I mean, it's very plausible, I think. And
they did end up getting that field goal after that.
Yeah, they did. But still, I mean, just Seahawks were not impressive. And we're talking about a team that already destroyed the Vikings regular season. And then look what this team did to the Cardinals, who
last week?
Just a week ago. Look what this team has done to the Cardinals at Arizona, and look like, holy shit, don't discount the Seahawks at all, despite them being, starting off the season 0-2, and even back then, people were like, oh, all right, well, fuck this team this year, right?
Right.
And they were trying to prove a point, but then, they came out this week against the Vikings, and the Vikings really showed truly what their potential is, and Vikings had every right to be, in the playoffs this year, and they had every right to. Uh, they have a lot to be proud of, is what I'm getting at. Because look at what the Vikings were 2 years ago.
Yeah.
They were nothing 2 years ago, and look what this team has developed into and how they turn around. And that's exactly what I said before this season started, is look out for the Minnesota Vikings because they're young, they're talented, and they're dangerous. And I think that next year they can only get better, which is really shitty as a Packer fan to know that Packers aren't locking. I mean, it already happened this year. The Packers lost the division to the Vikings, but Packers do not have an easy lock-in for the division anymore because Vikings are the team that are going to put up a fight for it. And
I want to say one thing that actually might make you feel better as a Packer fan because you mentioned them being a young team. For the most part, they are.
yeah,
But you know what's not young? Their rushing game. Adrian Peterson is not young.
yeah,
They've got a few more years out of him at best, and then their rushing game's gone.
yeah.
So unless they start working on that, they have a serious problem like looming them in the very near future.
I think they're expecting something bigger out of Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater isn't bad, but are you going to rely on him on the game more or on Peterson? And they're definitely relying on Peterson to
He
move the
reminds me of
chains.
where Russell Wilson was arguably just last year.
Yeah, he really was. If you want to talk about game manager that they want to call Russell Wilson, that is Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah,
Bridge,
he's kind of the Russell Wilson of his class. He's had
yeah,
the most success of that draft class. He's been relying on a power back and just had the better team out of him than like Bortles and Carr. I think was part of his draft class.
yeah,
So I think he's showing improvements. Though I mean, he
he
was rookie of
is.
the year last year, I think,
And between
and
having
he's getting
Mike
better.
Wallace and Stephon Diggs to throw it to, that helps him. Even Kyle Rudolph has been kind of helping him for a target. So he's got help around him. I mean, offensively, he has a lot of help around him. I'm just not seeing it yet. But, that could always change. Next year, Bridgewater can be, hell, even an MVP candidate. Like Cam
It
Newton
can
is
change
this
as
year.
quickly as one off season.
Exactly.
So all it takes is some good draft picks, a good free agent pickup, some improvements in training camp, and you can have a contender. So
Exactly.
who knows? Or they could fall off the map.
Yeah.
So you just never know.
I mean, look at the Lions did. 5 years
Yeah.
ago, they looked like that they were contenders for this shit, and then they fell off the map. So I don't
I'll
know.
say this much: out of the four NFC North teams, I'd still rather be the Packers.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
Who's still in the playoffs? So
Yeah. But
anyway,
I mean, you have Aaron Rodgers. You have your franchise quarterback. I mean, what other Bears have? Jay Cutler as their franchise quarterback, but look how far it's gotten them lately. I should say. I mean, they did make the NFC Championship with them, so
once upon a time.
once upon a time, yeah. Lately, I'm just saying before I get a bunch of angry Bear fans down my throat.
Oh, I'm sure all the Bear fans are gonna jump on here to defend Jay Cutler.
Yeah, good point. I guess there aren't
Okay.
too many of that.
No, too many. His mama? Is that, you thinking his mama might be watching this video? That's about it, I think.
I hope not, Mrs. Cutler. Anyway, maybe we should.
If you are, like, comment, subscribe.
Yeah, if you're Jake Cutler's mama, like, comment, and subscribe. Um, God, now I'm way out of sorts. We should probably wrap it up.
Yeah, I think that's about
Seahawks
it.
get the
Seattle
win.
wins.
So they're
They're
moving on
gold.
to Carolina,
And what
which
I think is going to be the best game next week.
that's what I was about to say. I think that's my most exciting game to watch, or that I thought this week was going to be Steelers and Bengals, which was it was good. It
It
got
wasn't
really
the best
good.
game. The
Yeah,
best game is actually your team.
yeah, I know, right? But next week I'm predicting Seahawks and Carolina. That's going to be one hell of a game that I definitely want to watch. And
I'm also expecting a better showing out of Seattle. I think this game was I don't want to call it a fluke, but I guess I kind of am. It felt fluky. Their performance felt kind of fluky. Like they just
Yeah.
got caught by a team that just for some reason had their number, but they're actually better than what they showed. I mean, they pulled out a win. Now they're at. They didn't even pull it out. They just got lucky.
Kind of like they did last
But,
year a lot.
right.
In the play. Seattle played exactly like how Seattle plays in the playoffs. They almost just get lucky breaks. They get garbage time wins all the time in the playoffs, and that's maybe why I've never been able to been on Seattle's, I guess, bandwagon, if you want to go that. I know bandwagon is almost like a taboo word to use around Seattle right now, but it is true. And you would think I should love Seattle because they have Russell Wilson, who is a Badger. You would think, right? And I do like Russell Wilson. Don't get me wrong. I do like him. But I think that's the reason why I can't sit there and try to defend Seattle or to try to really be like a huge Seattle fan because their playoff wins are garbage time wins for the most part. And this, you can't, or at least argue it for this game. You can't argue it against the NFC Championship last year.
Well, I guess if it was really garbage time, the game wouldn't be in contention though. If it was really and truly garbage.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, and you'd see where I'm
But
getting at with
they're
it.
they're
Like,
late. They're very late wins, and
yeah,
they're pulling them out of their ass. And this one, they didn't even have anything to. Like the very end,
wasn't
they didn't
even
win the
them.
game. They're
Yeah,
lucky the kicker missed. They didn't block it.
yeah, yeah. It wasn't even a close game. Like they really got
They actually
lucky.
did get really close earlier.
Yeah, they did.
Oh well, I think it's about it.
Anyway, yeah. So Seattle and Carolina, just that's gonna be a great game. Oh man, I'm gonna get so much flack because I went on that small rant about Seattle now, but it's out there, and
Who cares? We're gonna watch the bandwagon bowl next week between the two biggest bandwagon teams on the face of the earth.
yeah,
So I'll take the slack off you and put it on me.
it's
Boom.
true. It's true. Boom. Mic drop. Is that what that was? I think that's time.